Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring how the Thathari Maharishi's Panchendriya Thavam takes the ancient practice of meditation and, quite literally, transforms it into a scientifically measurable technology for conquering our modern sensory exhaustion. Because let's be real, we live in an era where our attention is constantly being hijacked, right? So we're going to look at a highly empirical framework designed to help you take that power back.
We've got a really structured, exciting journey ahead. We'll start with the sensory overload problem, dive into the science of biomagnetism, explore the evolution of the senses, look at rewiring the brain's frequencies, and wrap the whole thing up with empirical proof and healing.
All right, Section 1, the sensory overload problem. Let's start with a modern reality we are all way too familiar with.
I really want you to ask yourself, do you feel constantly exhausted by endless daily stimulation and screen time? Seriously, think about the constant notifications, the intensely flavored foods, the sheer volume of noise we deal with every single day. We almost always treat our five senses purely as these, passive windows to the world. But we completely ignore that they actually act as leaks, constantly draining our vital energy. So when you hit that brutal 3 p.m. slump, it's not just the lack of sleep. It's often massive sensory depletion.
Section 2, the science of biomagnetism. To actually fix this leak, we need to understand the vegetarian solution, which honestly requires a total paradigm shift in how we view human energy. Now, the key concept we need to grasp here is biomagnetism. According to the architecture of simplified Kundalini Yoga, or SKY for short, our physical body is sustained by an animating life force. And this force is made of fundamental energy particles whirling at immense speeds, which creates an endogenous electromagnetic field. Basically, the most crucial thing to understand here is that every single thought you have and every sensory perception you register actively consumes a measurable physical quantum of this internal biomagnetic energy. The crucial point to notice about these transmutations is that our senses don't just passively receive our environment. No, they actively transmute our precious biomagnetism into specific sensory frequencies. So when light hits your eyes, your internal energy is physically transmuting to process that light. When acoustic waves hit your ears, you are spending biomagnetism to register sound. Now, obviously, this continuous outward flow is totally necessary for survival. But when we overindulge, it leads to massive energy depletion. We are literally bleeding our vitality right out through our senses.
And that brings us to Panchendriya Thavam. This is the 5th stage of the SKY meditation system. By practicing Panchendriya Thavam, which translates to the 5 senses meditation, you learn to focus your life force directly on these sensory valves. You're consciously closing the energetic leaks. You basically stop the exhausting expenditure of your biomagnetism by turning your awareness inward. It acts as a direct, physical intervention in your body's thermodynamic cycle. Moving on to Section 3, evolution of the senses. What's so cool is that this practice isn't just some arbitrary thing, it's actually deeply anchored in evolutionary biology. Just look at how this sequence maps perfectly to our biological history. The meditative protocol literally forces you to focus your awareness on each sense in the exact chronological order they evolved over millions of years. So you start with the skin, mimicking primitive cellular life that only needed to feel temperature and pressure. Then you move to the tongue, kind of like early worms developing a digestive interface. Next is the nose, mirroring early insects. Then the eyes, representing reptiles developing spatial awareness. And finally the ears, the absolute apex of mammalian sensory evolution. Traversing this entire biological history in one single session is incredibly powerful. It dissolves the human ego and reminds us that our complex faculties are actually an inherited cosmic legacy. Okay, Section 4. Rewiring the brain's frequencies. Once those sensory gates are regulated and the ego is softened, we start to observe some profound neurological shifts happening in real time. This brilliantly illustrates the immediate physiological benefits. You see, when we're slaves to our senses, just reacting to every single ping and craving, our brain operates in frantic, high-frequency beta waves, and those are associated with stress, anxiety, and rapid energy loss. But by withdrawing from external stimuli during Panchendriya Thavam, your brain actively downregulates. It shifts from those jagged beta waves right into the calm, focused state of alpha waves. And alpha is the ideal frequency for deep introspection and behavioral modification. As the meditation deepens even further, you unlock theta and delta states. And honestly, this is where the magic happens. Your cortisol plummets, your autonomic nervous system shifts out of that panicked fight or flight mode and drops into the restorative rest and digest mode.
You are quite literally reinforcing the neural pathways that govern emotional stability, while at the exact same time, the pathways tied to impulsive sensory gratification are naturally pruned away.
To safely achieve these deep brain states, practitioners follow this exact methodical 6-step protocol. First skin, then tongue, nose, eyes, and ears. But step 6 is absolutely critical. The meditation culminates in elevating that conserved energy up to the Agna and Turiya chakras, which correspond to the pituitary and pineal glands. You see, if you just suppress your senses, the energy stagnates and actually causes frustration. But by elevating it to higher cognitive centers, that conserved biomagnetism is transmuted into higher spiritual awareness and total cellular purification.
Which leads us perfectly to Section 5, Empirical Proof and Healing. Now you might be thinking, okay, this all sounds great in theory, but this isn't just metaphysical philosophy. It's a proven psychosomatic intervention backed by hard clinical data. For example, in 2021, researchers Jayanthi and Valiamal actually put this meditation to the test. And they did it in one of the most volatile and challenging environments imaginable, the rehabilitation of youth within the justice system.
They conducted a really rigorous 12-week intervention program exclusively utilizing Panchendriya meditation. And they tested it on a specific cohort of exactly 56 juvenile male delinquents, a demographic that is, well, often characterized by a severe lack of impulse control and high environmental instability.
The empirical results were absolutely staggering. The post-test data showed highly significant improvements across the board. The practice effectively bolstered executive function and radically improved their capacity for self-regulation. By teaching these kids to just pause and observe their sensory impulses rather than immediately reacting to them, the meditation fundamentally mitigated their violent, reactive behavioral patterns right at the neurological source.
This transformation perfectly captures the shift from sensory enslavement, where your eyes and tongue basically dictate your actions regardless of the consequences, to what is traditionally termed Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga is the royal mastery of the mind. And, it's not about punishing yourself with extreme asceticism. It's about having a strong internal locus of control that leads to balanced, moderate enjoyment without forming those destructive addictions.
We see this physical healing in other areas too. A clinical study on 60 women suffering from hypothyroidism, an endocrine disorder that is deeply linked with chronic stress and depression, showed equally profound results. The 12-week intervention demonstrated that conserving biomagnetism at the sensory level allowed their bodies to drastically reduce severe anxiety. Basically, by stopping the energy leak, their bodies gained the surplus energy needed to effectively reset the entire endocrine system. Incredible, right?
It is just so fascinating how ancient wisdom perfectly mirrors today's clinical science. Take this quote from the classic Tamil text, the Tirukkural. It tells us that mastering your biological interfaces, your senses of touch, taste, sound, sight, and smell, is the ultimate path to true greatness. And as it turns out, that greatness comes in the physical form of physical resilience, glandular harmony, and an unshakable inner peace.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. We now know for a fact that every text message you check and every artificial flavor you chase physically costs you a piece of your vital energy. If mastering your 5 senses can literally rewire your brain and heal your body, how might conserving your own daily biomagnetism change your life? What will you choose to focus your vital energy on today? Keep questioning, keep learning, and start closing those energetic leaks.